to Movies That Matter, the podcast about recent films going above and beyond the call of box office returns to boldly explore a social issue affecting people's lives. I'm Stacy Moore.
I'm Nicole Canary.
And this week we're going to overanalyze the documentary Tickled. Kiwi journalist David Farrier stumbles upon a mysterious tickling competition online and intends to document it for a novelty story. Instead, he finds a bizarre and even threatening world created by a bully with deep pockets. I found this to be fascinating. I really enjoyed watching it. It's just as far as like storytelling goes. I'd never heard a story like that. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't quite sure where it was going to go from moment to moment.
Okay.
So just as far as like entertainment value, I definitely recommend it. And it starts out seeming like it's going to be a very lighthearted story, doesn't it? You know, he finds this Facebook page online recruiting young men ages 18 to 22 to take part in competitive endurance tickling. So it's posed as like a sport.
Right.
Right. And this guy, David Farrier, is a journalist in New Zealand and normally does kind of novelty stories, right, about, I don't know, people with funny habits or hobbies or whatever. And so
pet donkeys. I remember
pet
being a pet donkey.
Right. One guy, like, raises frogs or something. And
I don't remember.
There was just random stuff. And so that's why he looks into it, and he writes to the head of the company, Jane O'Brien Media, to ask her for an interview, and she responds with this, like, these actually several messages, right? Like,
nasty, homophobic.
Right, like slurs, just really strangely hostile vitriol towards this guy who just wanted to do an interview, which you would think would be, like, good press. But instead, like, he gets these, like, like you said, very nasty homophobic messages, and it kind of goes from there, doesn't it? So it starts out very lighthearted and turns very dark.
Yeah. Pretty quickly.
Right. And it escalates. They start sending lawyers after him.
Yeah, there's all this lawsuits, threatened.
Right. Because he does write an article. Like, he writes an article about how, hey, I tried to interview this competitive endurance tickling mogul, and she started saying crazy stuff to me.
Does he write an article, or does he just post on Facebook?
It could have been, it could have been Facebook. I think he said he did do a story for, like, the channel he worked for.
Okay, he might have done,
like a short, like just a column.
Yeah.
Or something. Like, in New Zealand.
Yeah.
So basically 80 people read it.
Yeah. And like 40 sheep.
Sure, right. And, like, she, quote, in quotes, she lost it, threatens to sue him in both the U.S. and New Zealand, threatens to ruin him financially, and he kind of looks into it and falls down the rabbit hole, finds all of these, like, just very sad stories about people that got involved with this quote-unquote tickling league and had their lives ruined in the same way when they became harassed, both personally and online, had their careers ruined in some cases by this person who for whatever reason is just deranged and has a lot of inner hatred and misery.
Yeah. So I have a bone to pick. I finally
let's get into it.
I have a platform to do it on.
Oh, good.
So this is interesting. This is something that I had long suspected about documentary films, and then it was actually confirmed to me with data by reading an article on Vox.com, which was actually about which actors and actresses are in the best reviewed films. And so they looked at all these Metacritic ratings that aggregate, the critical reviews. But as part of looking at that, they noticed that the rankings of who were in good films were super biased by the fact that critics are very harsh on comedies. Mm-hmm. The thing I noticed is one of the worst reviewed films was Coming to America.
What? A classic?
Yeah. I mean, and you're like, who were all these critics? Like, you're an idiot. That's like a funny movie and you're dumb. Like, you were bad at your job.
Right.
Right? And then, so comedies overall get lower ratings than dramas. And basically documentaries get a free pass. If a documentary is reviewed, it's almost always reviewed well.
Always brilliant.
And I looked at that and I'm like, I have long suspected that this is the case, that for whatever reason documentary films get a free pass. And I am here to tell you, this is not a good piece of documentary filmmaking.
Oh, you didn't enjoy it?
I enjoyed some of it, but like...
I was on the edge of my seat.
We are movie critics. Like, we are here to criticize. And like, as a documentary film, no, this wasn't particularly good. Here's an example. Yeah. So what all is the extent of Jane O'Brien Media? What countries does she operate in? Where is her ring? And the people who visited New Zealand, what are their roles in the company and how does it operate?
In New Zealand?
In America. In Jane O'Brien Media.
In America, it seemed to be that he had casting directors and cell leaders that would recruit in the various cells across the nation, and then...
Yeah, right. So Stacy can't answer.
What?
Yeah. Those three people, Kevin and Marco and Adam, like, how are they related to Jane O'Brien Media? How are they hired? How are they paid? What is the extent of their operations? How do they relate to the guy in Michigan?
Well, they're the LA cell, and the guy in Michigan was the Michigan cell.
Are you sure about that?
That's what they...
Right. It's never explained. Like, it's never... they don't... yeah, this is what... Okay. So, like, again, from a documentary filmmaking point of view, it's very clear that he is still just... that they're inexperienced. They're telling their sort of human interest piece, news segment story. Like, the extent of Jane O'Brien Media is never explained. Financials aren't pulled. Like, there's a lot of extra research they could have done for this film that really explained what this operation was, and they didn't
have access to any financial information until the end when he realized it was posted. That was a huge twist at the end. Having all his files posted online on the FTP server, which was clearly done by a disgruntled staff member.
Right.
But, I mean, that's the only... Unless he had subpoenaed them, he wouldn't have had any financial information.
So why did they subpoena them?
Because they don't... He's just a poor journalist. He mentioned at the beginning he doesn't have the resources to go after this guy with lawyers and subpoenas. He doesn't have those.
Yeah, so...
But they did have it at the end, so he did present that financial information, that no money is coming in, that it was all going out.
Sure, but he alludes to there being other cells and doesn't tell you what they are. Like,
well, he said that no one was willing to speak with him, that it was really hard because they were all being threatened for that purpose, to keep them from speaking to him so that he couldn't get the information. They were being extorted not to speak and not to give him the information needed.
Sure, right. I mean, you can make a lot of excuses for, like, why this wasn't a good film and why they didn't do more work and more research. But, like, when you watch the movie, I don't get the impression that they thought to do it or even tried. Right? Like, it's not clear to me that they're particularly good at, like, really... They're not investigative journalists. That's not who this guy is. That's not what he does. But they decided to make a documentary about this, and it's more a sort of cute... Here's what happened to us when we tried to tell the story thing, which is fine.
Well, they did find him. I thought that was pretty impressive. Like, they found his apartment in Garden City.
Yeah.
They found a lot of people that worked for him and went and interviewed them personally, the ones who were willing to talk. The others, he had, like, recordings of them all saying, no, we're afraid to talk to you.
I guess at the end of the day, I still have no real clue what Jane O'Brien Media is and how it operates and the extent of its reach, the number of videos that's posted. Like, there's just a lot of facts. There's a lot of color to this documentary, but it's light on facts. And again, to me, they're not, it wasn't made by investigative journalists. And it wasn't a very good documentary in terms of very much fleshing out all of the color and doing the hard research that you would need to do to really tell the story. So I found it like a nice piece of fluff, but as a documentary, it was middling at best. Like, it was an interesting story. I didn't find it uninteresting. Oh, I should have just said it was interesting. Sorry, everyone. Again, it annoys me that everyone just gives a free pass to documentaries and doesn't sort of dig in and say, but how good a documentary was this really? And to me, it wasn't a very good one. I found the cinematography overwrought. The slow-mo bits were just terrible. They didn't bother you?
No, because there were a lot of times when he needed to fill visually something that he only had an audio clip for.
Right.
And so it would have either been like just a still shot of a photo, of like a black and white photo, or he could put like this beautiful shot in.
I found it... Yeah, and this is interesting because it's clear we differ on the narrative tension. There's so much narrative tension built around, will we get to tell this story? And I'm like, I'm sitting here watching the movies, so like there's no narrative tension to me as to whether or not you're going to get to tell the story, since you obviously did.
I was more worried, like, were they going to get attacked? Like, physically in some cases. Like when he's
really?
Yeah, when he's being threatened, when he's like, oh, you know, he has a really nice family. I would hate for him to get involved with us, with his family being so sweet and everything. Like, I was more concerned about people showing up and, like, hurting him. Like, the guy was clearly deranged. It was less like, oh, well, gosh, I hope he gets the film out, because, yes, as you say, we're watching the film. It was more like, does someone get hurt?
Okay, but there were a lot of times in the movies where they pause and like, oh, we might lose our funding, we might not get to tell the story. There's several different moments in the film where it becomes, like, they have this agonizing moment of deciding whether or not to move forward. And
I think that's less for suspense and more for, like, just showing the process of, like, how the chilling effect of, you know, power and money can keep journalists from telling the stories they need to tell. Like, that happens all the time.
Sure, I agree, except, and I don't know why this is true, and this is where I fail as a movie critic. Some directors can take a story that has no suspense. Like, I will give my example of Zero Dark 30. Oh, Osama bin Laden's gonna die.
Right.
I'm like, I was on the edge of my seat.
Spoiler
it was
alert,
a foregone conclusion. I knew what was going to happen, and I still was, like, breathless with anticipation through the entire scene of the team going in to do it. So there are ways to draw suspense out of a moment, even when you know what the outcome is going to be. And they didn't successfully do that. So to me, all the disposition of, oh, are we going to continue? Oh, now we're having this lawsuit was like, yeah, but I know you're going to continue because I'm sitting here watching the movie.
But they still could have been sued and ruined or attacked and still put out the film.
I guess. I don't know. I just didn't think that they successfully created... For me, the tension wasn't there. It was just sort of like, move on. Tell me more about this story. So, yeah, I mean, I went in there admittedly with this bias of saying, like, prove to me that this is actually a good documentary, and I don't think, again, it wasn't a terrible documentary, but it wasn't a great one. Like, for how well reviewed it was, this isn't the documentary you need to go see in the theaters when there's so few of them. I doubt it will get an Oscar nod or anything like that.
Oh yeah, I can't really see that happening. No. It was probably one of the best pieces of storytelling I've seen in a long time. I mean, there were, in the room I was in, there were, like, audible, you know, reactions to things that were happening throughout the viewing of it. And, you know, I kind of have to hand it to them that, you know, the film's been out a month. Mm-hmm. And at least in our little theater here in D.C., I mean, the room was half full. And that's for a documentary, which documentaries don't generally get that much. These sort of theater play, you know, at least not a month in. Yeah.
Although, if you want to see anything that isn't some sort of action summer blockbuster,
slim pickings.
You may have noticed, podcast listening audience, Stacy and I are digging deep to find things to put on this podcast.
Really? Yeah. So it was either that or Suicide Squad, which I also saw, and Jesus, it was better than that. It was better than Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I mean, it was enjoyable. I just, like I said, it annoys me that people don't take a documentary and really apply the same level of critique to it.
Sure, they shouldn't get a free pass, certainly.
To apparently comedies, which everybody just savages for no good reason. Unless
Sure,
it's an
actually
Adam
a lot
Sandler
harder.
comedy, in which case...
He can do whatever he wants.
No,
Although,
you should
I
totally
haven't
savage
seen him in a
those,
while.
because those are terrible.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Go for it.
Well, any social aspects?
So the social aspect of online harassment, I thought was really interesting, and also the sort of life-ruining effects of putting yourself out on the internet and never being able to take that back.
Sure. So a little exposition. I guess the young men that eventually wind up involving themselves in this operation they are paid handsomely, or at least to them it's handsomely, to, subject themselves to extended bouts of tickling. Generally, they are bound by the hands and feet in a supine position, while 1 to 4 other young men all simultaneously tickle them, and they writhe around in sort of like gleeful agony, I guess. And a video is taken, and then they are each paid, and they go on their merry way. Or at least ideally that would happen, but what happens is this, the person behind Jane O'Brien Media, who is actually a guy named David D'Amato, who lives in Garden City, New Jersey, tries to repeatedly recruit them, like to get them to continue acting out these tickling scenes for these videos, and then when they refuse to continue, either because they have enough money or they just don't want to anymore, he begins to systematically ruin their reputations. Right.
Right. I will say one of the bright spots about the film was finding the sort of legitimate purveyor of this tickle media. They interview a guy who does make these same tickle videos.
Tickle fetish.
Yeah, and it's very clear that it's all above board, and waivers have been signed, and people have agreed to this, and it's very differently done. That part I thought was really good and really added to the
effective.
film.
Yeah, and he makes a living.
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
And so, sort of, we live in interesting times, and it's funny that it's taken sort of this long for the whole issue of online harassment to really blow up. I mean, we sort of referenced it in our last episode on Ghostbusters, how Leslie Jones had decided to quit Twitter because of the massive amount of vitriol and racist, misogynist stuff that came her way.
Did she drop her account?
She did, and then she came back when they banned.
I see, yeah.
And, for those of you who are not in the gaming world, was it last summer or the summer before, Gamergate, as it was called, all of which was started by a 9,000-word screed by some woman who happens to be a reviewer for video games. Her ex-boyfriend was angry and posted this very long, damaging, disgusting letter all about her and her life and her sexual history. He posted her address publicly, and she got death threats, and it escalated to all kinds of female journalists in the gaming community, like, again, Gamergate. It became this whole thing, but it was all sort of started by this very targeted online harasser who was able to marshal, other forces behind him because he had a bone to pick with his he was pissed this girl dumped him.
Jeez.
Yeah. And so the extent and reach of online harassment, the amount of information that gets put out there without your permission, like, that was what was so horrible about this issue is, these young men did it for a pretty good cash payout. They never agreed to have any of this go public. And then websites were made in their name, personal information was posted in retaliation. And frankly...
Like, he emailed their employers, he emailed, their potential employers.
Yeah, I mean, just the smear campaign is sort of...
Their families.
It's unlimited. It's unlimited.
And all with the anonymity of this, just Jane O'Brien Media website and email address, and just signing a fake name. This David D'Amato guy could do whatever he wanted and never be held accountable because he was a ghost.
Yeah, and so in the end, he is held accountable for a couple of counts of fraud and abuse,
Computer fraud, yeah,
not for harassment. They're never able to, and it's very hard to prosecute online harassment. The cops don't take it seriously. They don't know what to do. There isn't a person they can go and arrest, and so we're still sort of dealing with how do we handle and take seriously this problem.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it's just this sort of, it's a very sad story in this movie that we really just don't have any resources to fight against it.
Yeah, I definitely, I could see how he only got prosecuted for those 2 counts of computer fraud because those were, I think that was the point where the FBI got involved. Mm-hmm. And those are federal offenses that they could follow up on, whereas they can't follow up on, harassment, or because that's a state or a local, kind of offense, and it would take these people each, pressing charges individually, and, they either didn't have the knowledge or the resources to do that kind of thing. Or they were just afraid because they weren't sure, what this guy had done to them already, to follow up, they were afraid that he would, make things even worse. And, most of them were, they didn't have a lot of money. They were from low income. A lot of them were from low income neighborhoods. And, that's why they were willing to do such desperate things in the beginning of fly to LA to be, kind of a weird video for someone who's not, going to use it for their personal use. You only really do that if you just desperately need money, I would think. So they weren't in good situations anyway. So yeah, it would be really difficult for them to kind of follow up, and they would need to find, I guess, in order to make any kind of impact, they would need to find each other. They would need to, actually kind of lobby together.
Yeah, make it some sort of class action.
Mm-hmm. Which they didn't. These are just young men that aren't probably not super intelligent if they're spending their time doing this, and so they're not going to be able to kind of shore up. The organizationalness that, what's needed to kind of make something like that happen. They're just not going to know what to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, and it wouldn't matter to a certain extent, the prosecution is one thing, and maybe that would have a deterrent effect, but once their reputation, everything lives on the internet forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So once the reputations are damaged, there's kind of no going back from that. And you're always going to have this Tickled video that's out there for employers to see for, we've talked about online dating. When someone knows your real name, any date can Google it, and it's just out there, and it never goes away. And it's a really scary world to live in where we have so little control over our own reputations. And anyone can just take it and ruin it, the drop of a hat.
Mm-hmm. Without any kind of recourse or, threat of consequence. Although one of the ironic things about this character, David D'Amato, is that he was, because of how he treated people, he was constantly, preemptively threatening to punish them and sue them for the very things he was doing to them. So
yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, and I should have seen this coming, and it was one of the better twists of the film to find out that the first letter from the lawyer was real, and every letter after that was fake, and here's someone who's so willing to adopt fake identities and use it. I should have seen that coming, and I didn't, and I was like, oh, that's
and
crazy.
That poor lawyer looked just utterly befuddled when they, confronted him with this litany of messaging, of correspondence that had come from his address.
Yeah, he was
like, I didn't send any of these. And they're like, so is this weird to you then? He's like, yes, very weird.
Yeah, he clearly
trying not to show it, but yeah, very disturbed.
Didn't know how to react. It was very funny. Yeah, I mean, it's terrifying. And then, you know, you get to sort of the root of it, and of all of this is just one man's fetish.
Right.
Which
would be fine.
Yeah.
As we see, as you pointed out earlier in the film, we meet someone who's doing what this guy is ostensibly doing. Well, no, not ostensibly. What he's actually doing, but in a very legitimate and respectful way, and an economically feasible way. You know, making these tickling fetish videos with people who are, you know, who have agency and are being treated fairly and da-da-da-da-da. Whereas, you know, he could do that, but that's not, in the end, that's not what he enjoys about it, is it? It is the power. It is that, you know, and I think that's why I was mentioning this film to someone at work, and I mentioned how we eventually find out this guy is an assistant vice principal or something at what turned out to be 8 consecutive high schools in 10 years, because he kept being moved, you know, kept having to be either fired or leave, and he's a trust fund baby. He has nothing but money rolling in every month from doing no work. He doesn't need a job, but he systematically looks for these vice principal high school positions, and I think it's because he liked being in power over vulnerable young people. Like, he really liked being able to, you know, just really mistreat someone and then to have, like, no recourse because they're in a position of, you know, of subjugation to him.
Yeah, I mean, it's really a classic harasser story on so many levels. You know, you have somebody who almost stereotypically immediately goes to, like, homophobic slurs against the journalist and is insisting that there's nothing homosexual about these tickling videos, and you're like...
Okay, when no one even mentioned it. No one was like,
so
are you homosexual, sir? Like, no one was like...
No one brought it up, but you're like, all of these are young, athletic boys. Like,
mounting each other.
Yeah, there aren't any women in this, and the viewer of it is a man as well. So you're like, there's definitely, you know, this, again, I mean, stereotypes sometimes happen for a reason. It's such a classic trope that the self-hating person, like, immediately goes to attack somebody else as being gay. I mean, the journalist is gay, I believe.
Bisexual, yep.
It alludes to a same-sex partner, which you never see, although shout out to the parrot and the cat. When they show him at home typing, he's got, like, the cat on his lap and the parrot on his shoulder.
Yeah. That's right.
Excellent use of pets in this movie. Adorable.
Very sweet.
Although I was distractingly like, wow, look at that cat and parrot coexisting.
That was heartwarming.
So... and then you have, you know, again, this, like, almost stereotypical pedophile, you know, someone who likes young boys putting himself in a position of authority over young boys by being assistant principal.
Just terrifying.
Yeah, and then moving, again, that sort of harassment and need for control into the virtual realm, where it's so much harder to prosecute and to... stop the terrible behavior is so fascinating about this story, and just sad and kind of scary. Right,
it is heartbreaking at certain points to hear a couple of the testimonials. One young man is saying how, you know, someone in his family had cancer, and that's why he was doing, you know, why he needed the money, and how he couldn't ever work again because, or at least he had trouble getting jobs after that because, you know, the athletic teams he would try out for just didn't want the bad press or the potential for bad press, and then, like, there's a casting agent later who his mom starts receiving.
Okay, can we just say the casting agent was the best part of that entire movie?
I adored him.
That dude was hilarious and awesome. I adored him. So awesome.
And he tried to, you know, he had clearly a really good attitude. He had a sense of humor. He was just trying to, like, move along and not take it too seriously. But then, like, you can sort of see when he says, like, the messages his mom got about, you know, his brother who had passed away, and nasty things that this David D'Amato guy wrote to her about his late brother, her late son, and you can see that he's keeping a stiff upper lip, but that it really did hurt at the time to see his mom be treated in this way for no reason. It was just so senseless. And so it goes from being that character in particular was just great to watch because he's so delightful and funny, but then you do see him sort of being heartbroken at one point.
Yeah, and the fact that he has a conscience and he actually calls, he thinks he's working for this woman, and who's a previous alias to the Jane O'Brien media, and he's a casting director and he's brought these people in, and then when things go public, he is first to say, wait, they didn't sign waivers, what are you doing? And which then leads to the, immediate question David D'Amato, and he flips immediately to vitriol and harassment. So, to see someone who is, again, taken advantage of, thought he was doing something legitimate, and then has to reckon with the fact that he hurt other people is just a very moving part of the film as well. And then has to deal with the harassment on top of it.
On top of everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It is scary because it is so easy to do. I think that's what David D'Amato shows us, is that it's so simple to just send all of this messaging out there. It must have been time-consuming. The guy, it must have been what he did all day, because he accumulated these people to harass over the years. It must have been just...
You don't think he had a stock harassment lawsuit letter ready to go?
Sure.
He only needed to do it the one time. So.
Automated apps, that he just kind of set it and forget it. Yeah, I suppose so. Some of them, though, the cards, the birthday cards that guy got, handwritten, a lot of them were just impressive. The amount of effort and time that must have gone into it. This guy is truly, truly troubled. He really, really doesn't have anything good in his life. Oh, so the stepmother, I don't know if you read it, the stepmother that speaks to David Farrier towards the end, David D'Amato was suing her for $40 million.
Oh, I'm sure he is.
Because she answered that phone.
Oh, I'm sure she is.
And spoke to David Farrier.
Yeah, he is, in looking around the internet on this story, he has vehemently denied that he is behind Jane O'Brien Media. Although the evidence they find is fairly damning, and they do lay it out. That part they did lay out very well, and I was
smoking gun, yeah.
Yeah.
And he, in the process of denying that he is Jane O'Brien, consistently portrayed behaviors identical to Jane O'Brien.
Right.
You kept continuing speaking and acting in the exact same way that this journalist is purporting that he did.
Yeah.
So just shooting him, shooting himself in the foot. He's demonstrating that, yes, I am Jane O'Brien. While saying that he's not. Mm-hmm. It's just very bizarre.
Yeah, it's a really... at this point we probably spoiled most of it, so hopefully you've already seen the movie by the time you get to this podcast.
Yeah.
But it's just a very bizarre story that this guy stumbled upon, and there are times when it almost stretches credibility.
Sure, I think something I read, he said he got a lot of... David Farrier said he got a lot of people accusing him of making a mockumentary, of making the whole thing up, and he's like, nope, it is very real.
Yeah.
I wish this was not real, but it is.
Yeah. I'll admit, though, I didn't go Google competitive tickling. I don't know if you...
I'd be afraid to. I'm afraid to Google anything.
Okay.
I don't think I have the appropriate filters on my computer to keep me from getting, pretty much any phrase. I'm always wondering, what's going to come up from this if I Google it?
Who in the NSA is watching me now?
Oh, sure. Yeah, that too.
But yeah, I do think it's such a frightening story of being taken advantage of as a young person and not knowing any better, and then really kind of just not, again, you're just young, old, male, female, whoever you are, the resources at your disposal to fight against this kind of online harassment are almost nil.
Right, because, if someone stalks you outside your house, you just call the cops and they put a restraining order, and at least you can do that. But if you're getting emails...
Yeah, what are they going to do?
If they're posting videos...
Yeah.
How do you stop it?
I don't know.
And I guess the infrastructure has to catch up. They're always one step behind. One step behind the criminals.
Yeah, although, again, I mean, kudos to Twitter for its first outright ban. So, people go after the providers of the content, the web hosts or Twitter or Google or whomever. And I understand, it's got to be impossibly hard to police all of that content, but, at some point you just have an obligation to create a safe space, and if you can't do it, then traffic will move elsewhere. I hope, I'm an economist, I hope market forces sort of kick in, so we'll see how much private companies are willing to police themselves from this type of harassment. Certainly, I would like to see the media outlets whose authors get attacked, or, comment trolls, get booted off much more quickly and just be told this is not acceptable behavior and you don't get to be in this public space.
Sure, it is kind of the Wild West, isn't it? There's not enough sheriffs, to cover all that prairie. It's too vast in a way.
It's vast, and a free speech doesn't give you the right to participate in any given service, right?
Sure.
Free speech means you can create your own dang website and put whatever you want on it. It doesn't mean that you get to sit in a comment forum and tell the author of a story how you're going to rape her, and so I'm not sympathetic to that argument, where I am generally very sympathetic to free speech arguments, and I do think, I'm curious to see how it develops. Vox, which I referenced earlier, just doesn't have a comment section at all, because
that's one way to do it.
It's not worth it, and
if you can't police it, don't
even try. So,
I liked I found interesting the connection between the competitive tickling and ultimate fighting.
The MMA, mixed martial arts. How bizarre was that?
I found it interesting because it was essentially, taking these young men who don't have a lot of opportunities, don't have a lot of financial clout, and utilizing that sort of vulnerability to make them crawl over each other for a crowd's entertainment. Which, they're adults and they can do what they like, but there is definitely a certain amount of exploitation, or arguably there is.
Yeah, again, on the free speech thing, the guy was completely above board about the fact that he was making fetish videos for tickling. No problem with that. I'm not anti-porn, as long as everybody's paid and knows what they're doing, and
absolutely,
as given permission for the image to be used, and we're all clear on what's happening. And gosh, as porn goes, being tickled seems to me
pretty tame.
Well, and the least harmful. Although, I guess if you're ticklish, it does look somewhat excruciating.
David Prater did say, there is another film he could have done, which was, I think, what he was originally going to do, which was about tickling.
Yeah.
A film about tickling, where, you interview people and you talk to scientists and about, the experience of tickling and what's going on in the brain when tickling is happening. And I almost wouldn't have minded watching that.
Well, yeah, I was actually a little bit curious about, is there there seemed to be a tickling technique that I was like, is this a real, has everyone just sort of agreed after trial and error that this like 2-finger method is like the way to tickle someone? Podcast listeners, report back. Go tickle somebody and tell me the most effective way.
Let us know how it went. But please don't connect us to this act.
And don't YouTube it without that person's
Absolutely.
permission.
I guess there was a lot of discussion about, partially about this film, but in some other recent ones that sadly I cannot recall at the moment, about the journalists' responsibility to how they portray people that they've interviewed in a documentary. So, for instance, the stepmother at the end on the phone, it's not clear to me, at least in the film, and I haven't looked into it, whether or not she realized she was being recorded, whether or not she gave permission to be.
I can't imagine they would ever make this film and put that on the film without
possible.
A permission before or after. Yeah, I'm assuming they just cut that bit out.
I would like to think so, because they did blur out a face earlier in the film, which makes you think that was the one guy that didn't give his permission.
Right.
So I presume they did, but there were a few others apparently at the film festivals this year that actually got pulled. Tickled was not one of them. But there were a few others. One that Katie Couric was in, and like the folks that were interviewed felt like they had been misrepresented, that they hadn't realized what the film was about, and they didn't like how they were portrayed, and they felt like they were that it was, and they just didn't feel good about it, and they spoke out against it, and apparently a lot of these film festivals took them right out of the lineup. And I don't know enough about mass comm law to say like what is their legal responsibility. Do I have to tell someone that they're being recorded? Can I do a hidden camera because I'm trying to find out something that I feel is important, and they're not going to just say, sure, let's sit down to tea and talk this over?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be the other piece of the critique of documentary filmmaking as well. I agree with you, is that how much of your storytelling is objective, right? It's a documentary, it's not fiction, it's not meant to be told with a slant.
Or narrative nonfiction, right?
I mean, depending on how you... But then you have to, you sort of have to set it up that way, as this is not a true story. This is the story from my point of view, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's, again, if taking it back to written journalism, there's first-person narrative essays, and then there's, objective, long, investigative journalistic pieces. They're not written the same way. They're not done the same way. Mm-hmm. And you can't present yourself as making this objective piece and then just make it very subjective. This is my complaint about Michael Moore. I mean, his
a lot of creative devices, right?
Yeah, I mean, to just sell his point of view. And I would again say, his documentaries get a free pass. Like, oh, they're so great. They're not good documentaries because they're so unobjective. Like, to me, I'm like, that's not good documentary filmmaking to present that you're telling the story and then to slant it every possible way to your point of view. And so for this documentary, that isn't the critique I would make. I don't think they did enough, research or presented enough color, but I think having that, real purveyor of these tickle fetish, trying to tell the story from a couple different angles, I think it seemed very balanced integrity to me in terms of the, partly because it was so clear they had no clue what they were getting into. They didn't know how to bias it anyway.
Yeah, they didn't know where to come from. They're like, wait, I don't know how to feel about this. I don't know what's happening to me.
Apparently the story is now this. Oh no, oh my gosh, now there's we're getting sued. So now the story's about this. Wait, no, this fake woman who did this thing, so now the story's about this. Yeah, It does have entertainment value as they keep
you're going through
being
it with
unsure
them,
of
almost.
what the story is that they're actually telling, and that they don't kind of know until at least midway through the movie.
Sure. I think, some of the other ones that I read about, they used a lot of, as you mentioned, like Michael Moore does, would add these sort of theatrical pieces to it, and not always explicitly state that they were, in fact, like dramatized.
Right.
So there was one, and I'm sorry, guys. I wish. Maybe no. The Anthony Weiner one was actually on board, but there was another one where a filmmaker came out at a film festival and said, "Oh yeah, so and so who I feature in this film is actually an actress, and she was playing a composite character of people that I became familiar with." But he didn't say this until months after the film had been out in theaters, and people had been internalizing this as truth. Yeah. Like that's to me is an example that is clearly over the line. But then there are others where you go, like, I guess in this one, we watch a lot of footage of David Farrier reading his emails, right? Like he's, we see him sitting at his desk being filmed with, the really high quality, celluloid film or whatever, reading the first email from Jane O'Brien and the cut to the POV of his screen and blah, blah, blah. And we can all pretty safely assume that that was not being documented in the moment, that he sat down later and they filmed him at his desk and they filmed the screen. But we all pretty much figure that, so it's not really dishonest. We know that that's not happening in the moment. It's just a representation of it. But something like that with the actress portraying a character, like a composite character, that's just, to me, an egregious affront to the trust that a viewer puts when you say that if you say you're making a movie, fine. But when you say you're making a documentary, that needs to be, like, there's a whole lot of trust there that needs to be respected and honored.
And there's an amazing amount you can do with editing. Like, you can chop it in an interview to make it sound a certain way. You can, cross-cut how people are, standing to make it look like they're close to each other, far apart from each other.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot you can do, and you sort of have to have a critical eye in terms of whether or not you're being hoodwinked by the storyteller. And there's stuff they're going to do that they can't control. Like, they are going to have a perspective, and I don't have a problem with that.
Sure. Yeah, nothing's really truly subjective, right?
Right. Objective, you mean? Everything's subjective, yeah.
That too.
Yeah. But, yeah, so, no, that isn't how... I wouldn't lobby that criticism against this film.
Sure. It's pretty fair.
However, David D'Amato feels he was used or abused.
Really? Yeah, I guess it's all in the eye of the beholder.
Which is funny, too, because after all the terrible stuff he's done to other people, like, someone's made a whole movie about how...
Poetic justice.
Yeah, couldn't have happened to a better person.
Really? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Impact on a scale of 1 to 10?
Documentaries.
Right.
You're not spellbound, right? Like,
yeah. Nothing will ever beat Spellbound.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to have to give this a 1 for maybe people went and looked at competitive tickling videos.
For the world of tickle fetish.
Yeah, if you did not know that tickling videos were out there, maybe now you know.
I did not, yeah.
But sadly, I just don't think little tiny documentaries really.
Well, I'm going to give it a 3.
Okay.
I am hoping that with the sort of, critical acclaim and audience acclaim it's gotten, that maybe someone will look at just the things you mentioned earlier about online harassment and how there really is no legal recourse for most people. And maybe, who knows, maybe someone will...
Second guess their choices?
Sorry?
Second guess, like, whether they should be in this video or pay this person?
That, too. I was going to say, I was more thinking along the lines of, like, hopefully there'll be some kind of, like, either legislation or...
yes.
to address that concern. But absolutely, cautionary tale. People, if you see an online ad asking you to be in a weird-sounding video for a whole lot of money and a first-class ticket to LA, think twice. I know it might sound great. Don't do it.
I mean, high school girlfriends come and go. Dick pics last forever.
Absolutely. That is forever. You can't ever take that step down. Oh, goodness gracious. And revenge porn, there's just so many risks. So many risks, everybody.
But at some point, all of our reputations online will be smeared, so we can just move on.
Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully, we'll all be equally. It won't matter anymore. It'll just be one sea of just gray embarrassment.
Recommendations?
Yes, I'd like to go with a documentary.
Go for it.
My favorite documentary of all time. Have you ever watched American Movie?
No.
Oh, you will love it.
Tell me more.
It's great. So it's basically about, when I first started watching it, I thought it was a mockumentary. I thought for sure it was. It came out in the 90s, either mid to late 90s, and it's about this guy who is out in the Midwest. I want to say a community a lot like Muskegon or wherever that was in Muskegon. Thank you.
I lived in Michigan. Thank you.
There we go. Absolutely, kind of a Rust Belt, or at least Midwest town. And this guy is kind of an aspiring filmmaker, and he's making this horror film with the help of family and friends and local community members, and it is absolutely over the top. He as a character, as a person, it's just so over the top. Mm-hmm. And so is his friend that I felt like it couldn't be real, but it really, really is. And just he's no good. He has absolutely no talent, but he is so perseverant that it's just such a delight to watch him work and to try and to strive, and it's hilarious the whole time. Just how delightfully bad the movie is, and how bad the performances are, and how bad the writing is. It all accumulates into this beautiful, this sort of just beautiful collaboration in this community to help this guy. And as funny as it is, and there are lots of points where I was either shocked or just laughing so hard that I was crying or whatever. In the end, it's all about what it takes to really commit yourself to a creative pursuit. Mm-hmm. And so in that respect, it's actually quite beautiful. Mm-hmm. So anyway, American Movie. Okay. If you can't find it on Netflix, I'm not sure if it's there, but if it's not, try to find it online. It's got to be somewhere. It was at the time. It was quite acclaimed, so it's out there someplace. So check it out. It's a lot of fun. What have you got for us?
So this is funny, and this is why I can just be so incredibly harsh against this movie. So my recommendation, because many of you, like me, may not have stuck with Serial Season 2, which was just not as much fun as Season 1. But my cousin was like, no, stick with it, go back, listen to this story, and I'm glad that she made me do it, because, I mean, I will just say this, Sarah Koenig is the best at what she does. I can't, correlation isn't causation. I definitely feel like This American Life is appreciably worse now that she's on Serial. The stories aren't as interesting. It hasn't been as good. There's a noticeable drop-off in quality of that. And her ability... First of all, just the depth of journalism that they commit to on that podcast, but just her ability to spin the story and to ask the right questions to me is unparalleled. She just is really better at this than anybody else. So I don't love the story of Season 2, but the craft of it will carry you through, and that's just good. Again, it's not documentary film, it's documentary podcasting, but it's well worth your time. Excellent. If you gave up, go back.
That's good to know.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot of projects like that where a lot of people give up maybe a third of the way in, and the fans are saying, "No, stick with it."
I quit. I'm a quitter.
Life's short. I'm out of here.
I will walk out of a movie. I will put down a book.
I'm generally with you on that. It takes someone else to kind of come back and beg me to stay.
Yeah.
Right. But generally, out of here.
Yeah, life's too short. There's plenty more movies to see.
Absolutely, exactly. So many comic book movies.
Yeah,
available
I don't have to
to
see
us.
any of those.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Movies That Matter. If you did, please take a second to leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher or Google Play.
Yep.
Great.
We're on all 3 platforms now.
Excellent. And do recommend it to your friends. Visit us at moviesthatmatterpodcast.com or check us out on Twitter. You can find me at Snow White Pitch Black.
And I'm at Funarini.
And if you use the hashtag MoviesPod, we'll be sure to see it and respond. At least I will start following that hashtag.
Absolutely. We're getting the comment section up on our website. Sorry if anyone is trying to leave us feedback. There's a contact form and we'd love to hear from you. But if you want to start a discussion about any of the episodes, beware! Trolls are not welcome after this whole episode. We will moderate and delete anything we don't like because we are the host of this podcast and we can do it.
Absolutely. But I'm sure at this point, seeing as how only our friends listen to us, it'll only be cool people who are delightful and respectful and who have smart, insightful things to say. And we look forward to seeing all of those comments, right?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. I will expect them, actually. I will be heartbroken if I don't find any. Okay, well, thanks for listening. And remember, movies matter.
And so do you.
We'll see you next time.